Hello. Um, Today I will be reviewing The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. The Water Dancer is about a young slave named Hiram with an extraordinary gift, a gift I shall not mention here to avoid spoilers. Hiram grows up on a plantation called Lochless, which is owned by his father, who has another son named Maynard. Maynard and Hiram fall into a river. Maynard dies and Hiram lives. Hiram always wants to be free, so he runs away with a woman named Sophia. This sets off a chain of events that forever change Hiram's life. He and Sophia are captured and taken to a prison. He is sold from the prison to a cruel man who puts him into a pit out of which he cannot escape. He is tortured in this pit day in and day out. One day, Hiram awakes to find himself out of the pit and in the presence of Maynard's previous fiancée. She bought Hiram and has now freed him, explaining that she is part of the Underground Railroad. Hiram becomes an agent and helps to free enslaved people. I will not share any more as to avoid spoilers. I really enjoyed The Water Dancer for its writing, plot, and characters. The Water Dancer was slippery, like water. The writing had so much substance that it was easy to miss key information if I wasn't paying enough attention. I tried listening to it on audiobook, but the story went forth so quickly that I ended up having to go back and read what I'd missed of the audiobook. I do not think of that this is a bad thing, as the book was simply packed with substance and demanded the reader's attention. I very much enjoy plot-driven books, and because the writing was so packed with information, the plot was abundant and complex. I cannot share very much of it here as to avoid spoilers, but I will say that I felt very much alive when reading this book because it demanded I stay in the present. The characters in The Water Dancer were equally filled with detail, and I really love how Ta-Nehisi Coates presented their inner thoughts and emotions. I would say that the character development was very emotionally charged and was driven by the characters' internal states. I felt as though I was discovering the character's inner being for myself, and nothing was spoon fed to me. I felt very in touch with Hiram's inner feelings. For instance, let me find the page. A piece of bread wrapped in paper. I gobbled it down and in that instant knew I had never truly experienced hunger until my time down in that pit. However long I had gone without food, it had been long enough that the pangs of famine had faded from me, like a visitor who ceases to knock upon realizing no one is home. Page 140. There were a few themes which were prevalent throughout the book. One of these themes is dominion. The constructs of power and control were translated to the reality of Hiram's life in a very solid way. The idea held by every white supremacist in the book is that Hiram belongs to them, and they can do what they wish to him. The idea held by Hiram is that he belongs only to himself and deserves freedom. Sophia, Hiram's friend and lover, feels that Hiram wants ownership of her, which she rejects. Of course, Hiram's wish to own Sophia is nowhere near the same as a white person wanting to own Hiram. I just think that the theme of ownership and power over someone else's life is present in different ways throughout the book. To us, the readers, the concept of ownership of someone else is more in the abstract. But for these characters, it is a very real thing. Yet it is not experienced in the same way by everyone at every time. For Hiram, his mindset over his own enslavement shifts. I want to make it clear that slavery is always dangerous and harmful to the enslaved, and Hiram was as much held captive at Lochless as he is in prison. Let me find the page. All my life I had been a captive, but whereas the particulars of my birth had allowed me to feel this bondage as a mark or symbol, there is nothing symbolic in this hulking web. Page 121. I believe Hiram tricked himself into believing that he was less asleep at Lochless than he is in prison as a coping mechanism. Of course, he always wished to be free throughout his time at Lochless and his time in the prison. This is an example of how intimate the reader is with Hiram's inner thoughts and feelings, something which I think provides a lot of depth to the book. Hiram eventually joins the Underground, which brings people out of slavery and into the safety of the free states. I liked how this fictional book intersects with the real person Harriet Tubman. She becomes a guiding figure for Hiram, and I really looked up to her. I think the inclusion of a real person from history made the story seem all the more real. In summary, I would recommend this book to anyone, especially those who enjoy historical fiction. The writing is unlike any other writing I have ever come across, and I give the book 5 stars for its emotional writing, complex plot, and intimate development of characters. One criticism I have is that it was so packed with information that it could be confusing at times, but this just makes the reader pay attention more, so I don't believe it is entirely a bad thing. Reading this book gave me more insight to the life of an enslaved person and how brutal slavery is. It has deepened my understanding of the Underground Railroad, and I now know and appreciate how much work it took for agents to free enslaved people and deliver them to safety. The Water Dancer more than deserves 5 stars.